NSFW, what secret will you take to your grave? Please like, subscribe and comment so I can create more videos for you. We had an old cat growing up named Tuna. He was 16 or 17 and had a long and happy life but was really deteriorating. My mom did not want him put down as it was her cat and she seemed to be in denial about how decrepit and near death this cat was. One day she comes home from the store and my dad calmly tells her that he found Tuna dead under a tree in the Sunday. She was happy he died peacefully and on his own terms. What she doesn't know is that she actually ran him over as she was leaving for the store. She obviously didn't feel him under the tire but my mom killed her cat and we all lied about him dying in his sleep. You and your dad are really good people. This was absolutely the correct thing to do. My father bought me a beautiful Fender Stratocaster for my 15th birthday. It was unique and gorgeous. I sold it to a guitar shop when I was 20 because I needed the cash. I never had the heart to tell him. I even found one exactly like it almost 10 years later, after I had become financially stable. I bought it in an instant. He still thinks I have the guitar he got me for my birthday. I still don't have the heart to tell him. Best friend told me how much he hated his girlfriend and that in 2 weeks when he completed his move he was going to break it off. He died the next morning. She'll never know how unhappy she made him. That I absolutely hate my wife's special casserole. I stomach it down with a smile because she and our kids love it. In Dutch, when you boil an egg and then place it into cold water to make it easier to peel an egg, it's called to scare the eggs. One day when I was about 6 or 7, my mom asked me to scare the eggs. So, little joker I was, lifted the lid of the pan and yelled "BOOO." My mom cracked up and has been telling this story ever since, for over 20 years. She's come to love the story and still truly thinks that I wanted to really scare the eggs. Truth is I knew what scaring an egg meant and only wanted to make her laugh because she was in a sad place and time back then. It's made her laugh for over 20 fucking years. That means it's the best joke I've ever pulled off and I'd die before I'd let her find out I was just kidding. Edit. 2 letters. Edit 2. Thanks fellow human and egg lover for the gold. Now what do I do with it? Edit 3. Holy shit. My top comment by far is about my joke that entertained my mom for 20 years and is still going. I have mixed feelings about this, because I believe my previous top comment was about my female roommate thinking she was in trouble because of her internet porn searches. Way back about 8 years ago when I first started dating my now wife, she was extremely shy about her body and was very reserved because she had never been in a relationship. Once night while I was over, she said she was going to go take a shower before we went out to eat. About 10 minutes after she left her room to take the shower, I heard a sound from the bathroom. I got up and knocked on the door and asked if she was alright and got no answer. I waited about a minute yelling to see what was wrong and decided I had to check on her to make sure she was alright. I opened the door and she was laying on the floor of the tub passed out with the shower still running. I picked her up and carried her to the bed and grabbed a towel and wrapped it around her and tried to wake her up. After like 30 seconds she regained consciousness and asked if she had managed to put the towel on herself before she passed out. I lied and said she had it around her when I found her to make her feel better about it. I know it doesn't change a whole lot given that we have been married 3 years now, but I'll take it to the grave if it gives her peace of mind. That one time I got busted for weed in college and the police department forgot about it and never followed up on it or put it on my record after explicitly stating they were going to do so. Any chance they were just trying to scare you? Probably succeeding, from the way you tell the story. My parents are divorced and remarried. My dad is very happily married to my stepmom. My mom, not so happily married to my stepdad. They've both confided in me a long time ago that they are both still very much in love with each other, separately, of course. They live thousands of miles apart, but they ask me to never tell anybody in our lives about this. I intend on keeping that promise, but it hurts to know that they still feel so strongly about each other, and maybe, just maybe, could have gotten back together if they weren't so proud and stubborn. Such is life. Edit, extra detail that I totally forgot to mention. When I turned 18, my father and his parents, we're all very close, sat me down and handed me a folder with everything that happened regarding their divorce. All of the letters between my parents, the confession of the situation that started it all, and it kind of shattered my world at the time. I had this image of my mom and my dad, and these images and ideas of who they were had to be edited to add all of this new information in, and they clashed very strongly. Over time, I came to understand that people change, and the parents I saw dealing with their divorce are not the parents I have today. My mom was only 19 when they started dating, and they married 2 years later. My dad was 7 years older, so he had more life experience. From what I gathered, my mom just wasn't ready for that kind of life, that kind of commitment. I understand it a lot clearer now that I've been in my own relationship with my partner for 4 years now, and we got together when he was 18 and I was 21. Things are all the more difficult when you're living with someone at such a young age. We've made it work and we are extremely happy that we did, but we honestly felt like it would end at any point during the first 2.5 years. They were hellish. It also didn't help that my mom came from a pastor's family, and they were extremely strict, to the point of disregarding their faith for the sake of the family image to the public. There are some very dark stories about that, but this thread isn't the place to get into that, I feel. Everyone in my family, including my siblings and my dad's mom, believe my dad died of cancer. He really died because he got Hep C from IV drug use and later developed cirrhosis of the liver. When my dad got sick, my parents both told everyone it was cancer. It wasn't until 7 years after he passed that my mom told me the truth. Riding in the car with one of my best friends. He suddenly has a very distressed look on his face and frantically starts stuttering about needing to find a restroom. I will never forget the sound not 10 seconds later of him shitting himself in the driver's seat. I laughed my ass off all the way back to his house. I promised I'd never tell anyone. God. That feeling is the fucking worst. It's coming now, and it's in God's hands if you can make it to the throne. One of my brothers-in-law, Chet, was dying of AIDS. He was a frail, shrunken semblance of his former self, just skin stretched over his bones. Another brother-in-law told me that when he was alone with Chet, he put a pillow over Chet's face, and tried to smother him, to put him out of his misery, but he couldn't go through with it. Poor guy was crying and shaking as he told me. All I could do was give him a hug. What could I say? So, I covered up an attempted murder. I watched my uncle die of AIDS. Honestly, it's times like that you need euthanasia. It's a fucking sin to see someone waste away to nothing. The wife of a close friend knows that the friend was closeted and was gay before they got married. She believes that she is the only reason he decided to be straight instead. She admitted this to me on a 12-hour road trip once and then realized she'd said too much and swore me to secrecy. I didn't tell her that. Before getting married, the close friend admitted to me that he wanted to be gay but that he never dared to out of fear of judgment of his rural, conservative family. He almost didn't get married because he didn't think he could pull it off, but it seemed like that to save face with his family. They have been married over 20 years now. My good friend is gay. He pretends to be bisexual around the friend group, like having girlfriends and stuff, but I know he isn't sexually attracted to them. He used to openly ask me romantic things and he always hints at wanting to marry me. I think it could actually work out though. His parents are rich but extremely bigoted, so we could have a secret open marriage and I could spend their money. They already think we're sorta dating. This isn't my story, it's one my 8th grade Spanish teacher told me like a decade ago. We had a pet turtle who could escape the tank cage. Can't remember. We had for him. We would find him sometimes under furniture or crawling around the floor. I was like 8 or 9 at the time. One day in the winter we couldn't find him in his tank and we looked and looked for him but could not find him. I was heartbroken. I thought he didn't like me so he ran away. My parents went outside to look for him, but it had snowed so he didn't have much of a chance. They found him out there, frozen, but didn't tell me because they didn't want to make more unhappy. They told me he went to a better place or something, and that was the last time I heard about it until after my dad died and my mom told me the real story several years later. For some reason they thought maybe he was alive, but just frozen like an ice block. So they put him on a rack above the fireplace stove, can't remember, and tried to thaw him out. They did this at night after I went to bed. Turns out you shouldn't put a turtle above heat source. He thawed out pretty quick and then started to boil before he exploded and the shell slammed into the pan, which woke me up that night. I remember coming downstairs to see what happened and my family was freaking out. They said they dropped something and spilled it all over the floor and had to clean it up. I went back to bed not knowing they just tried to bring my pet turtle back to life from being frozen and blew him up instead. Sorry for being a terrible person, but that's fucking hilarious. Way too absurd. I never could have imagined a scenario like that. Sorry the turtle died, but thank you for the chuckle. That one of my deceased friends constantly cheated on another. He took her virginity, they were together for a while, she loves him and part of her still does. He cheated on her non-stop. They broke up after a while and he later passed away in an accident. Her and I got close and I never told her because it wouldn't do any good. A lot of other people are telling you made the right choice, but I'm going to tell you that you made the right choice. Good job. When I was 15 I was walking through the woods and saw my principal having a jerk-off session under the trees. No one would have believed me, so I said nothing. But goddammit Mr. McCann, I know what you do in your spare time. When I was in school, a guy said that he saw our art teacher at a gay bar. We weren't that surprised, because we figured he was probably gay, and then we said, wait, why the fuck were you at a gay bar? In 2008 I became a CNA with hopes and dreams of becoming an RN. However, after 4 years, I left the profession. The story I tell everyone is that my MIS made the job too difficult to perform. That is not the case. The real reason is that I developed a morphine addiction after a bad accident, and had started to steal the meds from the residents instead of disposing of them after they passed away. I left to get treatment, and didn't go back because I didn't want to fall into that trap again. I am now 5 years clean. I got my cousin pregnant but she had a miscarriage. We haven't told anyone nor will we ever. Never fucked a cousin before, but I feel like rule number 1 of diddlying family members should be don't fuck your cousin, but if you must wear a condom. I was using my dad's computer and it auto-completed our city escorts. I was 14 and had no idea what to do. It's been 8 years now, so I feel it's kind of past the familial statute of limitations. Nah, he might have just been browsing for the fun of it. I do that. Just window shopping. When our family cat of many years died, Dad insisted on putting it in the trash with everything else to be hauled away, whereas Mom and I pleaded, to no avail, to bury it in our backyard. As I've noted here once before, he remained adamant and wouldn't allow it. At night, I went out and removed our dead cat from the trash and gave it a proper burial in a remote area of the backyard and placed a small grave marker over the spot where it's interred. Dad will never know. Obvious throwaway. I work at an investment bank. However, to get the job I had to do a variety of assessments which among others included an Excel modeling test. Now I'm quite experienced with Excel, have built lots of complex financial models, but what this task involved was to make some corrections to a very poorly built financial model, not intentionally bad, just whoever did it didn't know their stuff well. They leave me in a room with a laptop to complete this task. I open up the spreadsheet and have very little idea where to start. This is just making no sense. As I'm scanning through the tabs desperately trying to find things I'm able to do, I notice something saved on the desktop. Some previous candidate's attempt was saved there. Well, I opened it up and started copying what that guy had done and added a few tweaks of my own. I ended up getting the job. I'd like to think it was a test and you passed. Welcome to the corporate bullshit. That one Christmas a younger female relative of mine and I were fixing our hair in the bathroom and she asked if I wanted to make out with her. She was pretty high, but I ignored the request and have never brought it up again. When I was young, my class held a bake sale in which every child had to bring in some baked goods to be sold, the money raised for some school project or another. Well, we'd never done this before. My mother didn't have a lot of close friends at the time, so she winged it. She made rum balls. I'm not sure if you've ever eaten rum balls, but they are not sweet and they have a peculiar rum taste, not what you'd normally sell at elementary school bake sales. All afternoon, kids will be kids. Those rum balls were thrown, tossed and squashed into the gymnasium floor. Parents bought them and gave them to their kids, who had one bite and, off they went on their journey. I didn't have the heart to tell my mother that people hated her rum balls. I told her that they were all sold early because, rum. But in truth, everyone hated them and they ended up everywhere but in people's mouths. Junior year of high school, my class was registering for next year's classes, so they brought us down to the computer lab. But there weren't enough computers for everyone. Knowing one of the counselors very well, she has me use the instructor computer at the front of the room. Well, just so happened that another counselor was logged into that computer, so full permissions. So, in addition to registering for next year's classes, a couple of my Bs turned to us from past classes. A few months later, I barely beat out a good friend for a scholarship because my GPA was slightly higher. In junior high and high school, a close friend's parents took me in. I loved them all dearly. I was a part of many holidays and spent the night at their house regularly. I was part of the family, in many very real ways. One day, suddenly and unexpectedly, her mom just passed away while on a business trip, from a brain aneurysm. These folks were saints. I wasn't the only one they had taken in. Another guy was adopted, at 18 years old, by them as well. They showed all the greatest kinds of love and kindness to me and him, and anyone else who we knew loved and respected this family. They never did anything to anyone, that I knew of, that wasn't genuinely kind and compassionate. During all the funeral activity, her dad, obviously devastated and exhausted, pulled me aside and said, "I have something I need to tell you, but you can never tell, my friend." I think I was a sophomore in high school, and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. Turns out, the mother, who was a mother to me as well, had been having an affair for 10 years and thought it was a secret. I didn't ask, but I had suspected the trip she was on when she died involved this other person. My friend's dad passed away this year, and he and I never spoke of that conversation again, nor of his wife's infidelity. I took my grandma's extremely old, sick and immobile dog by the lake and killed her Lenny style. She was a very sweet dog, but she was in a lot of pain and very close to death. My grandma couldn't afford to have her put down, so I fed her some liquefied chicken and liver, pet her as the sun went down, held her, then shot her. Broke my fucking heart, but I couldn't have her suffer anymore. She was a good dog. Edit. To the people blowing up my inbox with vague threats and name calling, go fuck yourselves. This dog did nothing but whimper in pain, laying there on the porch struggling to breathe for days. Couldn't eat, couldn't move. I gave her one last liver and chicken treat that she could taste and sent her on her way in the most painless and comfortable way I knew how. I gotta say, the people sending you messages can't even have the balls to say it here. Back on topic, that is a peaceful way to go, not knowing I mean. Took the boat out with my wife and her parents. We took a tube and a car charger air pump to inflate it. My father-in-law, who grew up on the Gulf of Mexico, and I backed the boat in while my wife and mother-in-law took the boat out as we put the truck and trailer back in the lot. As we were walking down to the dock, I asked if he had a plug to plug the air pump into. He thought I said, "Did you get the plug like to the back of the boat?" He freaked out, realized he left the plug out, and we sprinted to the dock. We ended up having to swim about 60 yards out to the boat as it stalled before my wife got it back to the dock. We had to be towed back into the boat ramp. It completely ruined the family lake trip, and my father-in-law beat himself up over it for a couple of days. He thought I was a hero for remembering the boat plug, and my pride just can't come to terms with telling him that isn't actually what I asked. I thought your father-in-law was going to have a candid discussion with you about butt plugs. I found a suicide note that my dad wrote in his drinking days. It was tucked in a Bible on a bookshelf. For some reason, while my mother was talking to my brother in another room, I just grabbed it off the shelf and found it. I showed my brother and he got rid of it. My father was a good man when he was sober in his last years, but sadly he died of a heart attack a few years back. I will never tell my mother. I once lost one of my friend's dogs for a few hours the first time I was watching them. This was after she grilled me on how they need to be leashed at all times. Apparently they don't come when called. That I called in half a day late to work one time, said I had a shits and wouldn't leave home until I thought it was safe to. In reality I was at my girlfriend's house 200 km away getting a ham job. Not really a secret as I told couple friends back then, although I'm pretty sure they won't remember it, and I don't think I'll be comfortable telling anyone soon, but at times I really wish I could. When I was 17 I started online chatting with a girl who was 31. We met once after 3 months. I actually lied to my parents, said it was an online game meetup, and that ended with a quick peck. Then after another 5 months or so, I got my driving license. Meanwhile, I drove 2 hours to a theme park where I spent what is still the most wonderful day I can remember ever having. It sounds cheesy but it was just like a movie, including a romantic lakeside and some panoramic kissing. After that day things started going south, for reasons that I now can see pretty obviously, and then we stopped talking, and I've never heard about her since. It's funny, most would think it was obviously going to turn out bad, and I think I could see that too, but it's still the memory I cherish the most. I was helping my aunt move some boxes when she got a new house and I found a letter from her to my grandparents in Ireland. They wanted to wait to come to America when their first grandchild was born, which was my older sister. However, the letter she wrote stated that my mom had cheated on my dad and the child she was carrying wasn't actually their grandchild, and to wait to come to America when her son, my oldest cousin, was born 6 months later. I'm not sure if any of it is true, but I took the letter and never told anyone about it. I'm a little worried to find out the truth. I mean, both outcomes are pretty depressing. On the one hand, your mom cheated and your sister isn't your dad's kid. Which is awful because that, assuming the drama, if it exists, hasn't been resolved, would open a whole nother can of worms. It would hurt your dad, your mom, your sister, and you. Or, if it's true, and your parents have resolved this, and your sister finds out, that could really fuck with her head a lot. But on the other hand, your aunt could be bitter and jealous and wanted the first grandkid attention for herself and herself alone. It's a sneaky way to, at least in her mind, always have her kid be just a little bit more special in the grandparent's eyes than your sister would be. Neither outcome is super great. Getting out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, I tried to fart and shit onto the carpet. I let my roommate find it and hoped that she would blame it on the cat. She did in fact blame it on her cat, and I watched her clean up my poop mess. I talk about it on Reddit where it's anonymous, but I never speak about it to my friends and family in real life. Basically, my heart is still completely broken from the fact that my only serious relationship didn't work out. I was such a bad partner and father figure, so it's good it didn't work out. I was just making a mess in their lives. But at least once a week I spend time daydreaming about them and wondering how they are doing. My ex's kid should be looking at colleges this year, assuming he goes. He was a smart kid, no reason he shouldn't. I wonder if my ex ever went back to school to get a degree, like she'd mentioned a few times. I wonder if she got married or is with someone long term. Or if her and the kid just settled into their own little family. I know it's not healthy to obsess, and I can't really change the fundamental stuff about me that made me a bad fit for them, but it can be kind of comforting to dwell on it from time to time. A guy I used to know died of an overdose a little while back. About a year after we stopped talking, I dropped the whole circle and moved on. What I didn't tell anyone was that he told me 6 months in advance when and how he was going to go. We weren't even slightly close, but we were kinda drug buddies and he knew I was a real depressive person, so he opened up to me. I dismissed it and even said to him, derisive laugh, "You're not depressed." Semicolon. He was generally a confident and happy guy and I thought he was just saying it to screw with me. In the 6 months between this conversation and us losing contact, it began to play on my mind a little. Before ditching the friend group, I was real close to telling someone what he had said and asking them to look out for him. I decided against it because those sorts of things usually blow up in my face. Lo and behold, I stumble upon his obituary in the paper. When the coroner's report is released, it lists the exact drugs and drinks he had told me he'd taken in the same month, only a week or so away from the date he quoted. Me, of all people, the most depressive and unstable person I know, I waved his troubles off as bullshit, despite knowing how bad that feels. Knowing him, he probably never told another soul how he was feeling. It'll probably haunt me forever tbh. We weren't close at all, I hated him sometimes, but he was a decent guy below the bravado and I probably could have saved his life. I could have been there for him when no one else was. I know exactly how he was feeling and I did nothing because of some stupid insecurity paranoia. Moral of the story, don't dismiss people's issues cries for help just because some people use mental health issues for attention. You never know if the person you're ripping on is right on the edge. Just give them a hug and tell them it's okay. Worst case scenario, you gave someone the attention they crave. Best case scenario, maybe you save their life. My granny blames my brother for my dad's accident. He wasn't there, he was 11 at the time, but my granny said it was all his fault for changing his mind on what he wanted to do that day, which then led to my dad's accident. It wasn't his fault, it was the fault of the woman not paying any attention and hitting my dad's motorbike with her car. My brother doesn't know and it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever let him find out. Edit for clarification, I don't want my bro to find out my granny blamed him. I worded it a little weirdly originally. Accidentally let a friend's pet goat escape. Chased it up and down one bank of the Mississippi. Friend and I got it back where it belonged. Don't tell. My sister was an extremely conservative stuck-up Christian in high school. She was obsessed with her purity and purity culture in general. My junior year of college my phone broke and I had to use her old flip phone from high school until I got a new one. I found her nudes that she was sending to older men and what they sent back. I also found texts of when and where they planned to hook up as well as her prices. No joke, I threw up in my mouth. Then took the phone outside where I smashed it with a sledgehammer and threw all the pieces I could find in the local river. Edit, a word. This is why whenever a religious figure goes on and on about being gay is a sin, I immediately assume he is the gayest person ever. One time, as a young teen, while sleeping over my grandparents' house, I was sneaking some TV after bedtime. They had every channel, so naturally I found my way to Skinamax. But with my door mostly closed, this wasn't something I was worried about getting caught with. I had the sound off, but was still enjoying some good old softcore pornography, until I realized the sound from my grandpa's TV in the next room matched up perfectly with what I was watching. In primary school, students weren't allowed in the building during lunch and break. So you were either in the dinner hall or the playground. When I didn't feel like socializing, I used to sneak into the school building and hide in different areas until lunch was over. On some days I would go to the very top stairwell of the building. All the classrooms were on the 3rd floor or below, so this place could only be accessed through certain stairwells. This floor only had 2 locked rooms that were rarely used. So I mainly just sat on the carpeted stairs looking out the window. The area was well lit due to the size of this window. Fortunately it was slightly blurred so no one would be able to see me from outside. Anyways, one day, I needed to use the toilet but decided it was too risky to try and sneak back downstairs. So 10-year-old me took a shit on the floor. Since no one really went up there, the piece of shit remained there for days. Occasionally I would check to see if it was still there. Eventually I told some of my classmates that I had found poo on the stairs, so by the end of the week the whole year group knew and it was finally gotten rid of. Luckily for me there was already another girl who had a reputation for shitting herself, so no one suspected me. I didn't do much lunchtime exploring after that. TL. Doctor took a shit on school stairs. Let another kid take the blame. I met a guy my dad works with and is buddies with on a gay hookup site. I hadn't met this guy before, so I didn't know he was one of my dad's work buddies at the time. So we meet up and have lots of sex, then say adios and go back to our lives. I wound up meeting this guy again a year later when I went with my folks to dinner. Best part was I also met his wife and teenage son that day too. Yeah, my dad doesn't need to know about this and I'm now friends with his son. He's a college sophomore now. I pray. I don't know why I keep it secret. I am not even religious. I haven't been inside a church in decades. I have never read a religious text in detail. But sometimes I whisper a prayer to anything that might be listening. I give it names: God, Allah, Odin, Ect, because I am not sure what I am praying to. I know it's probably wasted breath. But I pray anyways. Pray. If it brings you peace, it's not wasted breath. I have to say, I've never heard of anyone praying to God, Allah, and Odin, but whatever works for you. I threw away my friend's Game Boy Advanced SP when I was younger. Growing up, we both played Pokemon Emerald and Fire Red together on our Gamma Boys. I had a DS with the Game Boy cartridge slot and he had a standard Game Boy. The years passed and we stopped playing Pokemon every day, essentially banishing our Gamma Boys to the dusty realms of the closet shelf. When I was 13 or 14, I stole my friend's Game Boy because I had sold my DS and Pokemon cartridges. I wanted to relive the early years by playing some good old-fashioned Pokemon. One day, he mentioned how he wasn't able to find his Game Boy and asked his mom if she had done anything with it. I pretended to be equally interested in tracking down the missing Game Boy even though I knew damn well it was sitting at my house. I started sketching out about him finding the Game Boy when he was at my house, so I put it in my pocket one day, walked to the public library just outside our neighborhood and threw it in the trash in the bathroom. I couldn't bear with the guilt of telling him that I had stolen it from him, so I tossed the evidence. We're both in our 20s now and he still brings up from time to time that missing Game Boy. He says, dude, whatever happened to my Game Boy? It has to be somewhere in my house. I should find that for old time's sake. He shall never know about the heinous crime I committed all those years ago. Edit. Apparently I'm a piece of shit and my friend knows and is trying to get me to confess. This happened almost a decade ago, people. I'm 100% positive his missing Game Boy is one of the last things on his mind. This would be a fun thing to reveal at his bachelor's party or wedding reception, along with a replacement Game Boy Advance SP and the 2 games. Or just tell him someday while you're both good and drunk. Tell him you owe him a big favor and you really expect him to collect. If he's even a halfway decent person, he won't hold you accountable for stupid early teenager decisions. How the really nice TV my mom bought for my grandfather actually broke, but she got an even nicer TV for the inconvenience, so that's a bonus. In my teens I was playing some online game and had chosen a female avatar. I am not female, but I am of the would rather stare at a girl's ass for hours and hours than a guy's camp. This guy started flirting with me and I just rolled with, and it just kept rolling and rolling. I don't know why I did it. I'm most certainly not gay, but even though I was literally catfishing this, assuredly also, poor teen guy, I enjoyed the time I played a girl. I leave out the last bit when telling the story to my friends. Still feel a little guilty. I just randomly stopped playing one day and never even said bye. Hope he went and found a nice and real girl. He was a gentleman. That my cousin isn't really my uncle's son. Aunt went to a sperm bank. When she married my uncle, he was fixed and she insisted she didn't want a kid until mom got pregnant with me, only granddaughter, Dart. Then all of a sudden she needed a baby, so they went to a sperm bank and had my cousin. He is loved as hell and my uncle loves him, but the kid doesn't know. Hoping he doesn't have any mystery illnesses pop up because it might kill him to know the truth. Hell, I wasn't even supposed to know, but dad gets gossipy when he's drunk. That my brother tried to have sex with me when I was about 10 years old. I know he didn't know it was wrong and he didn't do me any harm, and I just remember feeling uncomfortable. But he stopped when I said stop. It never happened again and it didn't affect me further in a negative way, I think. I was too young to realize what it meant and stuff. So I'm scared to tell anyone, because I feel like it's not necessary. I dunno, it will probably go with my brothers and my grave. Edit. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Advice Zone. Similar stories in this. I didn't expect so many responses. It makes me feel less alone with this, even if it's a small thing. It will always feel a little weird though. So thank you again, and I hope you are all doing okay yourself. When I was about 13, I was visiting my aunt and seeing my baby cousin for the first time. While I was holding my baby cousin, my aunt and mother left the room and I was alone holding the baby. So of course I dropped her. Probably about 4 feet. To the ground on carpet. No one saw. I picked her back up and said she just started crying for no reason. Almost 20 years later and she seems alright. My mom caught every single fake illness I had to get out of going to school as a kid. I love my adorable crazy hypochondriac mama. I may have inadvertently caused a close friend to commit suicide. He was heavy into drinking and coke at the time, and he started fucking around on his longtime girlfriend. Being close to them both, I told her, which eventually led to him trying to rope her into a murder-suicide before settling on just killing himself. This one is not on you, dude, unless you were force-feeding him coke and alcohol. The excuses I make up to avoid social interactions. My friends have told me there's birthday party, terribly sick, phone died, etc. And I've seen them use them. But I won't tell mine. My suicide attempts. Barrel of a .357 to the roof of my mouth, but I could never do it. Something slightly more miserable about knowing you're too much of a coward to leave the suffering. Edit. Coming back to this morning was overwhelming in the best way. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I wish I had more to say. When I was 8 years old, I stole money from my best friend. My friend was from a rich family and she was very, very spoiled. She would brag about her saved money that she had in a little safe in her room. Meanwhile, my family had lots of financial issues. My mother was a single mom with 3 kids and things were tough. I could see how stressed my mom was from not being able to make ends meet. So one day I was at my friend's house. She had to go to the dentist but didn't want me to come with, so I was told to wait there. And I took it. Not all of it, maybe a third of it. I think it was about $500. Then I put it in my mom's wallet, a little at a time. I don't think she ever noticed. I never told anyone. I feel terrible about it. My girlfriend, now wife, was my first sexual partner. I lied to her when we met because I was insecure and also wanted her to feel more relaxed, I guess, if I had some degree of experience. That I'm not getting better with my depression. I've just gotten very good at hiding it. It's getting steadily worse, and I'll most likely kill myself before I'm 30, 24 now. It's not even a dramatic thing at this point, like I'm just so sad. I just transitioned from not being able to convince myself that my life has any prospective value, into not finding any reason to not end it. It's been 15 years of not feeling any significant human emotion, and I don't have any will left. Depression is a brain chemistry problem, not a my life has no value problem. I know this, because I found myself ready to swallow a .45 slug when my depression was at its worst. After getting things sorted with the right meds, I can barely recognize the person I was back then. But I surely remember that moment. Don't choose a permanent solution to what can be a temporary problem. Choose life, don't let fucking depression win. Alrighty then. My story started with my bike getting stolen, but it was not too much of a hassle since my mom had good insurance to cover it. I got a new bike that was way better than the old one. And not even 3 days later I find my stolen bike the next street over. I took my old bike, slashed the tires and threw the bike into the harbor only for me to see it every time I got there, seeing the rusting corpse of what was once my bike. Edit. I did it because I wanted to keep the new bike. Edit 2. It's a bicycle, not a motorbike. Freshman year of college, I was in a suite with 2 different sized bedrooms. One of the bedrooms was twice as big as the other and sadly I was assigned into the smaller room. Since I had moved into school a week early, I took the opportunity to swap all signs and tags identifying each room as A or B and spent the rest of the year enjoying a much bigger room. It wasn't until the end of the year I found out that the larger room cost more for boarding. Oops. I hate my best friend's dog. I love animals, don't get me wrong, but he trained her so poorly, it's heartbreaking. She has to be locked outside when we visit others because she does not listen to him when commanded. She runs from him, bites him, not hard for an adult, but a kid would disagree, jumps on people, steals food, clothes, tools, papers, etc. Tries to dominate other dogs, pulls runs on her leash, the list goes on. It is all his fault. He never bothered to train her because she is beyond that level. Obviously, she isn't dude. He still doesn't think there is a problem because she's still growing. No, dude, she isn't a puppy anymore and she could seriously hurt someone jumping on them like that. It is a very similar situation to a mutual friend couple and their parenting skills, or lack thereof. Above friend also complains about their parenting but fails to see his own mistakes as a dog parent. Their 3-year-old is so sweet and kind, but they are awful parents. They do little to discipline and then complain about how bad he is to us and others. They can't agree on punishment and, when one does, the other pits the child against the punishing parent. They talk down to him and, basically, call him stupid to his face. Just a reminder, he is 3. They baby him too, which makes it worse. He isn't allowed to run around outside because he will get heat stroke. We live in PA. He isn't allowed to participate in crafts because he's too messy and doesn't understand a game. 3 years old. They can't be bothered to try something with him more than one time, which drives me nuts. He started potty training and went strong for a solid month but regressed quickly after that. I suspect it is because they don't clean his kid's toilet often enough. It sits in their living room too, and he doesn't like the smell. Sorry guys. I will never tell any of you 3 how absolutely awful you are at rearing developing minds. My only hope is that you will never reproduce again or own another animal. In 4th grade, we had these workbooks and every subject was in this book. My teacher was out for half the year due to some health issues. Substitutes never checked the work while they were there, but they taught and assigned the workbook. In those 5 months, I did nothing with this book. I mean literally nothing. I paid attention. Just never wrote anything down. Homework? Nah. Didn't need to. I was half smart, half lazy. It was now towards the end of the year. When my teacher finally came back, she announced during the final week, she was checking everyone's book. Anyone not up to par would be left back. No ifs, ands, or buts. I was freaking out. Had no chance to copy. Way too fucking long to cram 5 months into a few half days. She would call up each kid, do a one-on-one and go through the book. My last name is towards the end, and she miraculously skipped me. I was for sure screwed as she would notice not meeting with me or having my book. Nope. This dope of a teacher even count to 31 out of 32 on her books. I still had my new C. I had to hide it the last few days until I threw it out. She would obviously go through the books again and not have mine. Reports cards came a couple weeks later. Horrible 2 weeks, and I passed all my classes. I still to this day have no idea how I got a passing grade and advanced. How did she not notice that there was no grade by my name? How did she not realize my book was missing? So many questions. She probably thought she misplaced it and was freaking out just as you were. I dated the same girl since I was in middle school, about 12 years old, and we helped each other through a lot of things. I lived a pretty good life and have nothing to complain about, but she wasn't so lucky. She had a bad step-father who molested her and her sisters. She told me when she was 14 about all of this and I begged her to tell someone. She refused for a very long time, but I eventually got her to tell someone and got her and her sisters into foster care. They had a hard time sadly in the system, but overall they have turned out better than they would have. The thing is, the way I got her to tell someone, she was too afraid to come out and say that she had been molested, so I told her that I had been too when I was younger. I told her that my grandpa, I don't have a grandpa, had touched me when I was a kid and that I told my parents and they put him in jail and everything was better. Her knowing that I knew how she felt gave her the strength to tell our school counselor I was never molested and she left me back in April. Even now I will never tell her the truth. I'm too afraid that she would regret her decision. I work for the railroad and I'm a conductor. I was on my train after getting the engine on there and I went down to take the handbrakes on the rail cars. The yard I was in is always at work and cars and tracks are always being switched out. The track I was next to was empty and when I was walking back to the cars I was walking closer to the empty track next to me without realizing how close I was. Not even halfway to the second car I feel a hard push in the back and next thing I know I'm launched maybe 5-6 featuring in front of me and land right on my knees. There was another crew in the yard on a different radio channel switching cars and they went into the track next to me and I had no idea, and since it was empty the conductor wasn't near the clearance point of the track, so he didn't even know I was over there. Once I hit the ground I looked up and saw the train cars going past me. It took a few seconds to register what happened at, holy fuck. I just got hit by a train and landed away from the track. What if I didn't land here but 3-4 featuring to my left? I'd be dead. OMG. Once I collected myself I got back on the engine and called my mom and best friend and let them know what happened and that I loved them. IDK why I did that but I did. I was just so scared. Only person that knows at work is the engineer cause I had to patch up my bloody knees before we continued on. He told me he wouldn't tell anyone and neither will I. We are talking about other employees. I can't imagine what would happen if I did tell someone and then it spreads. Lucky to be alive and I might keep that one to myself and maybe when I retire, 38 years from now, maybe I'll tell a 19-year-old new hire to watch out in the yard lol. I made a girl come in class. We were watching Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I try not to think about this. I dropped my roommate's weed once when I was grinding it and packing a bowl. I lost a good 1/3 of it. He will never know. I gave my oldest son a piece of coal from the Titanic for Christmas, however, I gave it to him as if it was from his grandfather who passed away not too long after that Christmas. Makes me a good parent, right? Our house got broken into. My laptop was stolen among a lot of jewelry. The thieves, or at least whomever had a laptop after buying it, used the webcam to take pics. I only realized about 2 years later when Windows 10 had the auto-rotating image on the start menu. I thought, why is this Asian guy always on my images? The images were auto-loaded up to my Microsoft account, but it's too late to do anything now. Before I met my fiancé, I was the other woman for someone who was cheating on his girlfriend. The guy I was with told me he still loved me and so I sacrificed everything, morals, happiness, time, for him. And he threw me away like a used condom. That was the absolute lowest point of my life and I came dangerously close to killing myself due to several other factors. My fiancé knows that it was a bad situation. He knows I was very close to ending my life, but he will never know the details of it. Even though it was before I met him, I know it would crush him to know I was in such a fucked up situation. I slept with my friend's boyfriend while they were still together. She and I weren't friends at the time. In fact, I did not like her all that much when I slept with him. When I broke up with the boyfriend I stole from her, we bonded over how much of an idiot the guy is. 3 years later she came out as gay, but I could still never tell her because she would feel so betrayed. Throw away here because you reminded me of mine. I met a girl on an online date site. We sent photos and messed around. Fooled around. Then stopped talking. About 2 weeks later I meet a girl and we hit off huge. Move in together. She introduces me to her very best friend. It's the girl I fooled around with pretty hardcore not long ago. Time passes and I marry my girl. Then my best friend marries her best friend. It's been 15 years. Neither my wife nor my best friend know I've done terrible dirty things to his wife, my wife BFF. We still see them almost weekly. Sometimes there is that knowing glance. We take it to the grave. Shit my pants while walking my dogs and came back inside and dropped a bit of dribble on the floor. Told my sister that it was the dog. She cleaned it up. One of my best friends told me she took a package that was sitting in front of a neighbor's door in the apartment building she lived in during her 20s. Turned out to be a birthday gift for the woman as per the card. The woman, presumably after having her birthday forgotten, committed suicide 2 days later. My first boyfriend raped me. My family was really conservative and I wasn't supposed to have a boyfriend, so I felt like I couldn't say anything and I was really ashamed that I let it happen. It took me years to recover mentally from that and I'm still doing work. Where I will bury my secret chest of actual treasure. None of this. The treasure is friendship shit or mementos that only have emotional value. I'm talking a variety of currencies from around the world, gold and silver if I can, and other expensive bits and bobs I can get and fit in a standard pirate chest. But there might be a map. I'd halve it, put half someplace secret, and hand down the other half from father to son. There will be a way to find the first half, written in cryptic words on the back of the second half, of course, to prevent my son, and so on and so forth, from just finding the thing. I'd wrap up the second map in red tape and legalese, where nobody can touch the second map until my great-grandson is 18. I don't know how to do that, but I'm gonna f***ing try. I am 100% fully serious about this. My best mate's fiancé went on a hooker binge in Prague weeks before marrying her. He unceremoniously dumped her some years later. She gave him everything and was essentially homeless and clueless why. Every time I see her I want to tell her, but no good will come from it. I wanna get down with my aunt so bad, not blood related. Her laugh is so sexy and she is so fine. I creep through her FB pictures all of the time. She has some in a swimsuit. She's 50 right now, but still looks fine as hell. When her daughter grabbed high school, people just thought she was an older sister. The frustrating thing is that there are no models or stars that look similar to her. She has a unique look. Yesterday I was hanging out with a friend I used to date and she had a bug bite on her arm. She said it was itchy, so I scratched around it to show her how to get rid of that feeling. She moaned and thrust her hips forward, exactly in the same way as when I used to go down on her. I stopped, covered my mouth, laughed at the mortified look on her face. She has since sworn me to secrecy. My ex-girlfriend was raped before she ever met me and I've never told any of my friends. So I'm my senior year of high school. I finally convinced this hot guy to have sex with me. He said only if it was during school, so we found a cool spot in the theater and we got down to it. While in the famous position 69 he was on top giving me head and I was doing the same, of course. After a while I couldn't but notice he was putting his weight on me and I couldn't catch my breath. I ended up passing out from having his dick block my airways, and when I opened my eyes after blacking out he was praising me for my great skills laying next to me. I never told him I passed out and he basically came in a dead guy. And I missed giving a huge presentation worth most of my grade, which was a group project, so he technically fucked 4 people that day. You fucked 4 people. You chose to have sex rather than give a presentation. Don't put that shit on him.